92nd Street Y online media is made possible by the generous support of the Sidney E. Frank Foundation and by listeners like you. This program features Truman Capote reading from Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was recorded April 7th, 1963, before a live audience at New York's 92nd Street Y.
Would you like me to read a scene from Breakfast at Tiffany's? I can do that or a story. Wait a second. Well, the time of the setting, the time of this story is during 1943, during the war. And the narrator of the story has just moved into a house, and living above him is a Japanese photographer, Mr. Yuniyoshi. And that's all you need to know at this point. "I've got the most terrifying man downstairs," she said, stepping off the fire escape into the room. "I mean, he's sweet when he isn't drunk, but let him start lapping up the vino, and oh God, Kelbeast. If there's one thing I loathe, it's men who bite." She loosened a gray flannel robe off her shoulder to show me evidence of what happens if a man bites. The robe was all she was wearing. "I'm sorry if I frightened you, but when the beast got so tiresome, I just went out the window. I think he thinks I'm in the bathroom, not that I give a damn what he thinks. The hell with him. He'll get tired. He'll go to sleep. My God, he should. 8 martinis before dinner and enough wine to wash an elephant. Listen, you can throw me out if you want to. I've got a gall barging in on you like this, but that fire escape was damned icy. And you look so cozy, like my brother Fred. We used to sleep 4 in a bed, and he was the only one that ever let me hug him on a cold night. By the way, do you mind if I call you Fred?" She'd come completely into the room now, and she paused there, staring at me. I'd never seen her before, not wearing dark glasses, and it was obvious now that they were prescription lenses, for without them her eyes had an assessing squint, like a jeweler's. They were large eyes, a little blue, a little green, dotted with bits of brown, varicolored like her hair, and, like her hair, they gave out a lively, warm light. "I suppose you think I'm very brazen or très fou or something." "Not at all." She seemed disappointed. "Yes, you do. Everybody does. I don't mind. It's useful." She sat down on one of the rickety red velvet chairs, curved her legs underneath her, and glanced round the room, her eyes puckering more pronouncedly. "How can you bear it? It's a chamber of horrors." "Oh, you get used to anything," I said, annoyed with myself, for actually I was proud of the place. "I don't. I'll never get used to anything. Anybody that does, they might as well be dead." Her dispraising eyes surveyed the room again. "What do you do here all day?" I motioned toward a table tall with books and paper. "Write things." "I thought writers were quite old. Of course, Saroyan isn't old. I met him at a party and really isn't old at all. In fact, if he'd give himself a closer shave... By the way, is Hemingway old?" "In his 40s, I should think." "That's not bad. I can't get excited by a man until he's 42. I know this idiot girl who keeps telling me I ought to go to a head shrinker. She says I have a father complex, which is so much merit. I simply trained myself to like older men, and it was the smartest thing I ever did." "How old is W. Somerset Maugham?" "I'm not sure, 60-something. That's not bad." "I've never been to bed with a writer. No, wait. Do you know Benny Shacklet?" She frowned when I shook my head. "That's funny. He's written an awful lot of radio stuff, but Kel Rat. Tell me, are you a real writer?" "It depends on what you mean by real." "Well, darling, does anyone buy what you write?" "Not yet." "I'm going to help you," she said. "I can, too. Think of all the people I know who know people. I'm going to help you because you look like my brother Fred, only smaller. I haven't seen him since I was 14. That's when I left home, and he was already 6'2". My other brothers were more your size, runts. It was the peanut butter that made Fred so tall. Everybody thought it was Dottie the way he gorged himself on peanut butter, but he didn't care about anything in this world except horses and peanut butter. But he wasn't Dottie, just sweet and vague and terribly slow. He'd been in the 8th grade 3 years when I ran away. Poor Fred. I wonder if the Army's generous with their peanut butter. Which reminds me, I'm starving. I pointed to a bowl of apples, at the same time asked her how and why she had left home so young. She looked at me blankly and rubbed her nose as though it tickled, a gesture, seeing often repeated, I came to recognize as a signal that one was trespassing. Like many people with a bold fondness for volunteering intimate information, anything that suggested a direct question, a pinning down, put her on guard. She took a bite of apple and said, "Tell me something you've written, the story part." That's one of the troubles. They're not the kind of stories you can tell. Too dirty? Maybe I'll let you read one sometime. Whiskey and apples go together. Fix me a drink, darling. Then you can read me a story yourself. Very few authors, especially the unpublished, can resist an invitation to read aloud. I made us both a drink and, settling in a chair opposite, began to read to her, my voice a little shaky with a combination of stage fright and enthusiasm. It was a new story. I'd finished it the day before, and that inevitable sense of shortcoming had not had time to develop. It was about 2 women who share a house, school teachers, one of whom, when the other becomes engaged, spreads with anonymous notes a scandal that prevents the marriage. As I read, each glimpse I stole of Holly made my heart contract. She fidgeted. She picked apart the butts in an ashtray. She mooned over her fingernails as though longing for a file. Worse, when I did seem to have her interest, there was actually a telltale frost over her eyes, as if she were wondering whether to buy a pair of shoes she'd seen in some window. "Is that the end?" she asked, waking up. She floundered for something more to say. "Of course, I like dykes themselves. They don't scare me a bit, but stories about dykes bore the bejesus out of me. I just can't put myself in their shoes." "Well, really, darling," she said, because I was clearly puzzled. "If it's not about a couple of old bull dykes, what the hell is it about?" But I was in no mood to compound the mistake of having read the story with the further embarrassment of explaining it. The same vanity that had led to such exposure now forced me to mark her down as an insensitive, mindless show-off. "Incidentally," she said, "do you happen to know any nice lesbians? I'm looking for a roommate." "Well, don't laugh. I'm so disorganized I simply can't afford a maid, and really dykes are wonderful homemakers. They love to do all the work. You never have to bother about brooms and defrosting and sending out the laundry." I had a roommate in Hollywood. She played in westerns. They called her the Lone Ranger. But I'll say this for her, she was better than any man around the house. Of course, some people couldn't help but think I must be a bit of a dyke myself, and of course I am. Everybody is a bit. So what? That never discouraged a man yet. In fact, it seems to goad them on. Look at the Lone Ranger, married twice. Usually dykes only get married once, just for the name. It seems to carry such cachet later on to be called Mrs. Something or another. "That's not true." She was staring at an alarm clock on the table. "It can't be 4:30. The window was turning blue. A sunrise breeze bandied the curtains. "What is today?" "Thursday." "Thursday?" She stood up. "My God," she said, and sat down again with a moan. "It's too gruesome." I was tired enough not to be curious. I lay down on the bed and closed my eyes. Still, it was irresistible. "What's gruesome about Thursday?" "Nothing, except that I can never remember when it's coming. You see, on Thursdays, I have to catch the 8:45. They're so particular about visiting hours. So if you're there by 10, that gives you an hour before the poor men eat lunch. Think of it, lunch at 11. You can go at 2, and I'd so much rather, but he likes me to come in the morning. He says it sets him up for the rest of the day. I've got to stay awake, she said, pinching her cheeks until the roses came. There isn't time to sleep. I'd look consumptive. I'd sag like a tenement, and that wouldn't be fair. A girl can't go to Sing Sing with a green face. I suppose not. The anger I felt at her over my story was ebbing. She absorbed me again. All the visitors do make an effort to look their best, and it's very tender. It's sweet as hell the way the women wear their prettiest everything. I mean the old ones and the really poor ones, too. They make the dearest effort to look nice and smell nice, too, and I love them for it. I love the kids, too, especially the colored ones. I mean the kids the wives bring. It should be sad seeing the kids there, but it isn't. They have ribbons in their hair and lots of shine on their shoes. You'd think there was going to be ice cream, and sometimes that's just what it's like in the visitors' room, a party. Anyway, it's not like the movies. You know, grim whispering through a grill. There isn't any grill, just a counter between you and them, and the kids can stand on it and be hugged. All you have to do is kiss somebody is lean across. What I like most, they're so happy to see each other. They've saved up so much to talk about. It isn't possible to be dull. They keep laughing and holding hands. It's different afterwards, she said. I see them on the train. They sit so quiet watching the river go by. She stretched a strand of hair to the corner of her mouth and nibbled it thoughtfully. I'm keeping you awake. Go to sleep. Please, I'm interested. I know you are. That's why I want you to go to sleep. Because if I keep on, I'll tell you about Sally. I'm not sure that would be quite cricket. She chewed her hair silently. They never told me not to tell anyone in so many words, and it is funny. Maybe you could put it in a story with different names and whatnot. Listen, Fred, she said, reaching for another apple. You've got to cross your heart and kiss your elbow. Perhaps contortionists can kiss their elbow. She accepted an approximation. Well, she said, with a mouthful of apple, you may have read about him in the papers. His name is Sally Tomato, and I speak Yiddish better than he speaks English, but he's a darling old man, terribly pious. He'd look like a monk if it weren't for the gold teeth. He says he prays for me every night. Of course, he was never my lover. As far as that goes, I never knew him until he was already in jail, but I adore him now. After all, I've been going to see him every Thursday for 7 months, and I think I'd go even if he didn't pay me. This one's mushy, she said, and aimed the apple out the window. By the way, I did know Sally by sight. He used to come to Joe Bell's bar, the one around the corner. Never talked to anybody, just stand there like the kind of man who lives in hotel rooms. But it's funny to remember back and realize how closely he must have been watching me, because right after they sent him up, Joe Bell showed me his picture in the paper, Black Hand Mafia, all that mumbo-jumbo, but they gave him 5 years. Along came this telegram from a lawyer. It said to contact him immediately for information to my advantage. You thought somebody had left you $1 million. Not at all. I figured Bergdorf was trying to collect. But I took the gamble and went to see this lawyer, if he is a lawyer, which I doubt since he doesn't seem to have an office, just an answering service, and he always wants to meet you in Hamburg heaven. That's because he's so fat. He can eat 10 hamburgers and 2 bowls of relish and a whole lemon meringue pie. He asked me how I'd like to cheer up a lonely old man, at the same time pick up $100 a week. I told him, look, darling, you've got the wrong Miss Golightly. I'm not a nurse that does tricks on the side. I wasn't impressed by the honorarium either. You can do as well as that on trips to the powder room. Any gent with the slightest cheek will give you $50 for the girl's John, and I always ask for cab fare too. That's another $50. But then he told me his client was Sally Tomato. He said, dear old Sally had long admired me a la distance, so wouldn't it be a good deed if I went to visit him once a week? Well, I couldn't say no. It was too romantic. I don't know. It doesn't sound right. She smiled. You think I'm lying? For one thing, they can't simply let anyone visit a prisoner. Oh, they don't. In fact, they make quite a boring fuss. I'm supposed to be his niece. And it's as simple as that. For an hour's conversation, he gives you $100. He doesn't, the lawyer does. Mr. O'Shaughnessy mails it to me in cash as soon as I leave the weather report. I think you could get into a lot of trouble, I said, and switched off a lamp. There was no need of it now. Morning was in the room, and pigeons were gargling on the fire escape. How, she said seriously. There must be something in the law books about false identity. After all, you're not his niece. And what about this weather report? She patted a yawn. But it's nothing. Just messages I leave with the answering service so Mr. O'Shaughnessy will know for sure that I've been up there. Sally tells me what to say, things like, there's a hurricane in Cuba and it's snowing in Palermo. Don't worry, darling, she said, moving to the bed. I've taken care of myself a long time. The morning light seemed refracted through her. As she pulled the bed covers up to my chin, she gleamed like a transparent child. Then she lay down beside me. Do you mind? I only want to rest a moment. So let's don't say another word. Go to sleep. I pretended to. I made my breathing heavy and regular. Bells in the tower of the next-door church rang the half-hour, the hour. It was 6 when she put her hand on my arm, a fragile touch, careful not to waken. Poor Fred, she whispered, and it seemed she was speaking to me, but she was not. Where are you, Fred? Because it's cold. There's snow in the wind. Her cheek came to rest against my shoulder, a warm, damp weight. Why are you crying? She sprang back, sat up. Oh, for God's sake, she said, starting for the window and the fire escape. I hate snoops.
Thanks for listening. 92nd Street Y Unterberg Poetry Center webcasts and access to our archive are made possible by the generous support of the Sidney E. Frank Foundation. For more information on the 92nd Street Y and all of our programs, please visit us on the web at 92y.org. This program is copyright 1963 by the 92nd Street Y.